good evening, good morning, good afternoon, or whatever time you're watching this. Welcome back to Socrates Jones, Pro Philosopher 2. Last time we debated with the psychologist and philosopher Fanon. We also thought our mom was reaching some conclusion, but the gate decided to keep closed on our way home. So now we're in Chapter 6, The Old College Try. What am I going to do? This is worse than ever. Ari, thank God, she's finally awake again. Jen, you're back. Does that mean Dad is... Hi, Ari. Dad! Sorry I ran off. I needed some time to think. But you've got yourself a good roommate. She helped me talk through it. And Marcus is pretty cool, too. We bonded over sweater vests. Oh, I guess he is. Look at him. They're comfy and easy to wear. Well, he's not wrong there. Dad, you don't need to be sorry. She's really... Things have gotten bad since you left. She's just shut down. Yeah, we saw the end of it. Fanon sure got under her skin. Pythia always hated therapy. That was something else. Seeing Pythia give up like that, it was just hard to watch. Thought if anyone could make a difference, she could. Wow, I underestimated how much these two believed in her. Listen, everyone. I've seen Pythia this upset once before. It was not fun. But when she pulled herself out of it, well, that's when she decided to run for office. Oh, right. And shortly after that, you two... That's important here. Is she'll pull through this. I know she will. We just need to have her back. No more checking notes through the portal, though, right? I make no such promises. Mom? Mom, where are you? Okay, get up off the floor. Come on. It's a theoretical floor. Why are you back here? It's over, Adney. It's not over, Mom. Gotta give the old college try. Some of my original answers didn't work. That's baffling, but there's more we can do. We can't just back down. You have to keep trying. Whoever said that was a fool. You said that. When you first got here. Well, then, point made. I'm the queen of fools. I've been lying for so long, Adney, to myself, to everyone, putting on this optimistic, patriotic mask, trying to ignore everything clearly broken around me, smiling as I cut my feet on the glass. I mean, yes, things are really messed up, but... Okay, you know what? I'm not the right person to convince someone else to be less jaded. If I may, please. I have a plan that could help the senator sort through her current motivational miasma. It could also address the disillusionment you have expressed from the very beginning. Let me guess, debate another dead guy. No, that approach clearly isn't working. So it's time to debate two dead guys. An exciting twist, yes? There are two of them. Sure, Arbiter. Then allow me to introduce you John Rawls and Robert Nozick. I've heard Robert Nozick, have not heard John Rawls. I don't know who that guy is. Both professors at Harvard. These men have profound influence on the political left and right, respectively. Please, you give me too much credit, Arbiter. Oh, drop the modesty, John. Remember that the Guardian said in your obituary. I wouldn't know, Robert. I was dead. So was I, 10 months earlier. But all information is available here, you know? The English-speaking world has lost its leading political philosopher. Well, if we're quoting obituaries, the Telegraph called you the greatest American philosopher since William James. Are you sure about this, Arbiter? Growing up in the United States, you likely have a pre-existing allegiance to some of the variation of their ideas. Engaging both will force you to switch perspectives more readily than you otherwise would. This is your grand plan, deliberately mimic the nonsense I deal with in real life? It's not nonsense. Political debate furthers the discourse and challenges our stances, helping us make society better for all. Well, maybe that was true at one point, but these days I find it harder and harder to believe that debate actually does anything. John's right, though frankly he should have accepted my utopian principles are superior by now. If you can consider your principles utopian and not part of a financially obsessed dystopia, that means this guy's probably on the right. What does that mean? I care plenty. Well, it could... If he's on the right, he's literally on the right. And this guy could be on the left here. Care about plenty of things that aren't money. I always say people who like sunsets are just as valid as people who like yachts. Rawls. You only say that when you're pretending the rich are discriminated against. The focus has always been on defending the yachts, not the sunsets. Well, at least I'm not a covert authoritarian. You don't mean that. Reason for debate added to the idea slate. Utility beyond money. Covert fascist. Sunsets, yachts. Ugh, stop, please. Rawls, Nozick, I know you've been at this for a while, but can we slow down and stop flooding my idea slate? Yeah, get out of my damn head. I'm gonna look these two up real quick. Nozick. Nozick was American philosopher. He held the president of the American philosophical situation. Sort of libertarianism. So he's very right wing, I think. Yeah, he was a right libertarian. Yuck. John Rawls. What about you, baby? American philosopher of the liberal tradition. So I'd probably align more with Rawls in pretty much every way. Probably wouldn't align with Nozick at all. You've been at this for a while. Can you slow down and stop flooding my idea slate? Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Jones. Yes, as am I. He's just so wrong about everything. God, this really is like the real world. Let's start with just one of you, shall we? The rest should flow from there. John, would you like to start? If I must, I suppose your work is mainly a response to mine. Not just a response to you, my work at its no, please. Ahem. There's a common reason governments fail. One, your previous debate with Fannin covered in stark detail. Right, turns out people hate each other, which is why this is all pointless, and I should just rot here. Well, it can get pretty dire, yes. But if we adopt the right mindset, we can make real headway in this issue. We simply must deal with the problem at its source. All societies are fundamentally cooperative ventures. To succeed, they must draw forth the willing cooperation of all. Yet most governments cannot escape inherent bias. Those in power help themselves, undermining cooperation. Imagine instead that every decision maker was stripped of all knowledge of their particular lot in life and placed behind a veil of ignorance. With no knowledge of their status, participants wouldn't be able to rig the game in their favor. Such leaders would be compelled to design a fair system, one that guarantees willing cooperation from all its citizens. By placing ourselves behind the veil of ignorance, we assume the original position, a state before self, and thus before self-interest. Ah, yes, the original position. When this idea was first proposed, the intelligible realm was abuzz. Immanuel Kant was especially impressed. I'm aware we've exchanged autographs. Not sure how I feel about that information. So if you think all my fellow senators could just forget who they are, we'd be golden. What a practical solution.
Nonsense!
You're getting hung up on a non-ideal theory, Senator, but we must first establish our ideal theory. Ideal theory? Ideal political theory assumes ideal conditions, people willing to comply with whatever rules are chosen, but that doesn't follow reality. Reality isn't ideal. Society is sufficiently well off to support them. It helps establish the target, and you don't need the target, you need the target for solving for potential complications. The original position may be impossible for us to fully attain, but it's the perfect decision-making target. Fine, whatever. I'll try anything at this point. Marcus, if you're watching, we're switching our research to Amnesia Machine. Maybe we can use it to forget this whole travesty. Perfect decision-making target, we'll see about that. Come on, Ariadne, let's ask a few questions. Oh, you're helping? Of course! I couldn't leave you to fend for yourself against the diabolical John Rawls. Aha. Well, we should get started. All societies are fundamentally cooperative ventures. To succeed, they must draw forth the willing cooperation of all. Clarify. Variants of this idea have been repeated in other debates. It boils down to this. People dislike their government, they will overthrow their government. So a government must be viewed favorably at last. And the only way to successfully get the cooperation of all is to serve all. Backing. It may take months, it may take years, but a lack of willing cooperation will destroy any government. Sorry about that. I had to clear my throat. After all, why would citizens willingly obey a government they do not approve of? You yourself established it quite well in your counters to Machiavelli. Okay. Most governments cannot escape inherent bias. Government that does not serve its people, instead serves the people in the government. Back. People bring them with them a set of self-serving preferences and biases. These biases naturally tempt individuals to rig the game in favor of others like themselves. Now, given our world's limited resources, some attempt to justify this behavior as necessary to survive. But left unchecked, especially in powerful positions or when determining a constitution, this tendency becomes very dangerous. It can permanently skew society in favor of one demographic, which, as we've learned, will lead to collapse in the long term. Yeah, plenty of history's made that apparent. Limited resources and self-interest. Imagine instead that every decision maker was stripped of all knowledge in their particular lot in life, veil of ignorance. Participants would not know their age, race, gender, intelligence, worth ethic, sexual orientation that might anything disfavor them. People stripped of such knowledge are said to be behind a veil of ignorance. You can alternatively refer to them as being in the original position. State before, self-awareness. Couldn't decide which term you liked more, huh? They have slightly different uses. One refers to the state you enter, the other how you enter it. Okay, well, where does he have to support the statement? It's a thought experiment. There isn't really anything to back it up. I already explained to the senator how, even if this ideal state isn't perfectly achievable, picturing how people would behave in it is still helpful. Fair enough. No knowledge of their status, participants wouldn't be able to rig the game. Those who don't know who they are are forced to plan for the possibility of being anyone. The only way to ensure their own well-being is to act to benefit society as a whole. This is a common example involving human self-interest. Given the world's limited resources, those in power are often tempted to steal resources from the vulnerable. But leaders who don't know their own identities can act on such temptation. If they treat any group poorly, they risk discovering that they themselves are a member of the mistreated group. So the only way to not screw themselves is not screw anyone at all. That is accurate and succinct, if crudely worded. Such leaders would be compelled to design a fair system. Under the veil of ignorance, leaders have no choice but to pursue fairness. The system is fair, all citizens will stand behind it. Are citizens also behind this veil? No. The veil is only a temporary state applied to leaders at the moment of a decision. I guess stripping everyone's identity forever is too sci-fi even for a thought experiment. I guess back then, it's a thought experiment. Seems pretty self-evident. The government structures society fairly. No reasonable citizen could object to it. I certainly object to it. Am I unreasonable? Yes. You're both unreasonable. Everyone's unreasonable. Everything is unreasonable. Alright. What we got here? Let's check our ideal slate, shall we? Reason for debate is tests of ideas. Help us decide the principles are best. Utility behind money. If you view transactions as only monetarily, you miss other benefits like sunsets. Covert fascist. Opponents covert fascist. I'm not ever clicking that. Limited resources. There are only so many resources to go around. We have to make do with what we have. Safely capable of seeing beyond their own wants and needs and act for themselves alone. How do I challenge this? I feel like it's hard to challenge that thought experiment. All governments depending on willing cooperation, while removing selfishness from the design system is a fair system. Societal structure would certainly result in the need of cooperation. I mean, let's just try it. Yeah, self-interest. All successful governments require willing cooperation, correct? Correct. And cooperation falls apart when leaders put their own interests first. Also correct. The people see that the government is not looking out for them. This is the value of the original position. It gives leaders perspective to choose what is most just for everyone. Most just for everyone. Gotta say, it's a nice ideal, but now we must face the non-ideal. This won't actually produce willing cooperation. What? I see your angle. This should be good. The original position tackles bias for decision makers, but does nothing about the rest of society. And when decisions come down, people won't simply fall in line. But if the resulting society is good for everyone, good is not great, Rawls. And people want society to be great for themselves. Look, I assume neither of you played video games in your philosophical retirement homes, but bear with me. In this game I play, Battle Bakers 2, the developers are constantly rebalancing character types. They make some stronger and others weaker in order to create better gameplay. It's not a perfect process, but most of the time they succeed. New dynamics emerge and the game is kept fresh. Most players don't care about the whole game, they only gripe about changes to their own characters. Those monsters cut the productivity of cookie cutters by 15%. Who cares what the gingerbread rush combo was previously overpowered? Gingerbread rush? Are you positioning that our lives are part of some game? Would explain all the twists I've been put through. What? No. Don't be ridiculous. If people can't see beyond themselves in a game, where the stakes are far lower, how can you expect them to do so in real life? How? Boils down to this, Rawls. People struggle to put themselves in other shoes, especially when they benefit from not doing so. All they see is how decisions affect them, or as Fan would point out, people like them. So even if they only lose a little in pursuit of a better whole, they'll still believe their government neglects them. They'll kick and scream and complain loudly on social media. There are a lot of nice things about your thought experiment, but an ability to unite everyone isn't one of them. So even if the government could adopt this unbiased state, we'd still be doomed. Marcus, cancel the amnesia machine. Very slick, Ariadne Jones. It was astute of you to respect the self-interest of individuals, something old Rawls here always loses sight of. I mean, whether I respect it or not, people will find the systems their leaders choose unfair no matter the leader's intentions. When you distribute resources according to a pattern, some will lose something. It's inevitable. And no one ever asks the impacted citizens for their consent, do they? There's no such a thing as a fair redistribution. Pattern principles are inherently unjust.
Nonsense!
Yeah, shut up, nerd. Hold on, Nozick. Why are patterned principles unjust? Excuse me? My objection to Rawls was that it seemed difficult to choose a pattern everyone would like. That's more about how people would respond than the rules themselves. But you're saying such rules are inherently bad. Why? John, you know what this means. Naturally. Change places. What just happened? Robert is about to present one of his different ideas. As he provided limited support when you challenge me, I shall do the same as you challenge him. Only seems fair. You'll need all the help you can get. My logic is incredibly sound. I even brought slides. Oh my, get that shit out of here. Failure pattern principles. Let's say we redistribute wealth, achieving whatever we spread we deem acceptable. We call this D1. But suddenly, Wilt Chamberlain appears. He decides to play again, and everyone wants to pay to see the game. When all is said and done, Wilt could amass more money than anyone else. A new pattern has emerged. D2. Every transaction was voluntary, but our ideal wealth distribution has broken. So any pattern would demand we cancel the game or take Wilt's earnings. Pattern principles will constantly violate people's liberty to freely exchange for what they want. There we go. You've always favored colorful thought experiments, Nozick? And I'll admit, the diagrams are quite nice. Indeed, I'd expect nothing less from the creator of the utility monster. But I do have a question for you. Who is this Wilt Chamberlain? Oh, Arbiter, my poor man. Sometimes I forget how ancient you are. Actually, I don't know who that is either. Is he a streamer or something? She's a millennial. Or a Gen Z. She could be Gen Z. No. That's my girl. Oh no, is my topical reference outdated? Am I the old one? Wilt Chamberlain was a famous basketball player, Miss Jones. Started with the Globetrotters, ended with the Lakers. Well, I don't care much for sports. Yes, that must be it. Surely my references are still hip with the kids of today, as hip as philosophy in general. Shall we begin? Sure, let's see what Nozick knows. What the nose knows. Distribute wealth? Well, okay, I get the vibe of this. Clarify for me. Chart showed same cash. Are you assuming that's the pattern we apply? Not at all. I'm only showing a flat distribution because the track changes visually. Our starting distribution could also be like this, or like this. All that matters is that we've chosen an ideal pattern of wealth and achievement. Okay, back that up. This isn't really sort of statement that needs support, it's just no setup to the argument. We're assuming that we've succeeded on any various distributive ideals. Suddenly, Will Chamberlain appears. It's time to play again. Everyone pays to see the game. Clarify. Will Chamberlain, famous basketball player, is playing a game. People want to see him play. How does he appear so suddenly? Is he also a wizard? Wilt would walk into the scene normally. I was just embellishing. Statement updated. Now, I'm not going to make you update your statement for that. Notice like how Wilt enters is irrelevant. Statement unupdated. You're a wizard, Adney. Hear all dialogue involving Arvid's weird wizard stuff. Okay. All said and done. This can mess more than anyone. Clarify that. Must admit, I'm not sure how the clarify this beyond was shown in the chart. Okay. Feeling that clarification is going to be few and far between here. Transaction was voluntary. Clarify this for me. Any pattern that cares about maintaining some distribution of wealth will be broken the moment anyone does anything. Even if all the actions were taken voluntarily, they'd have to be undone to restore the ideal distribution. Okay. Pattern principles would consistently violate people's liberty of freely exchange for what they want. Any significant transaction will break our distributive ideal. Thus, in order to maintain the ideal, we would have to constantly interfere with these transactions. Okay, let me see what we got in our ideal box. Utility beyond money. I feel like the utility beyond money doesn't necessarily... Let me try this. Utility beyond money. Okay, Nozick, consenting adults must be free to make their own transactions, yes? I've been pretty clear about that. And patterns have to interfere because any transaction breaks their vision of justice. Indeed, money has moved, the distribution of wealth will no longer comply with the specified goal. I get it, on the surface, that seems hard to argue with, but that's because you're dealing with a surface analysis of transactions. Excuse me? This entire time, you've been talking about the patterns and transactions that track only one variable, monetary wealth. But cold hard cash is one thing individuals can value, and the model gets more complicated if we acknowledge that. What do you mean, Ariadne? Let's say we track another type of wealth. How about, I don't know, happiness? Still have a bit of nostalgia for utilitarianism, I guess? Ari started at the first game as a big fan of utilitarianism. She's shifted her position since. If we add happiness to our assessment of transactions, we get a starting gate like this. What is imagined? I imagined up a widescreen, baby. My happiness does not use archaic slides. This is your starting point, H1. Though the people all have money, they're not super happy. They may even have negative happiness. These sad tracks are so emotionally dependent on sports, and no sports are happening. But after the game, we get this. We get to H2. Even though the non-wilts lost money, they gained greater happiness. The total comfort is better than what we started, which makes sense as to why people want to see the game in the first place. Suddenly, it seems less certain a pattern would have to interfere, as the results were positive for all. But if the game's terrible and the fans are charged $1 billion, H3. Wow, those are some sad, sad bars for everyone but Wilt. Seems more like everyone would want to interfere with. The non-Wilts are left with so little, future transactions will grind to a halt. I'm no accountant, but the math checks out. Nozick. To assume all patterns would constantly interfere requires a lack of nuance. It's possible to design the rules to only protect us from intense edge cases that otherwise leave our autonomy intact. And then, wilt or non-wilt, we'd all have a sporting chance. I'm gonna get nonsense here. Well, 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 astutely put, Miss Jones. Using your own charts was a nice touch. Now, if we could consider for a moment how we should go about designing such a pattern. Let me guess, by using the original position? Well, since you mention it...
Nonsense!
Let's not invest too much stock in Ariadne's chart just yet. After all, they're likely to crash the market. I think I raised pretty solid points. Your argument was clever, but it does not match the strength of my convictions. Very little interference from the government can be justified, and what you described doesn't fit the bill. We shouldn't intervene just because an exchange might make one of the parties a little sad. No, only a minarchist state can give people the autonomy they deserve. A minarchist state? What does that mean? Once again, libertarianism coming in, very small government. Marx introduced the idea of an anarchism earlier. Is that related? Much of my work was in response to the call of anarchism. I could see the appeal, though my variant of choice was anarcho-capitalism. But in a minarchist state, it is a better option for a variety of reasons. Much can be accomplished with a very slight government. Our world starts wholly unbowed. Anyone can lay claim to it. Individuals can claim as much property as they're able with little limitation. But once claimed, goods must be freely exchanged without theft, force, or fraud. A minimal state would therefore form to protect against such aggression. This state exists only as a night watchman taking action against those who violate these principles. Yes, individuals have rights, and there are things no person or group may do to do them. Only the barest minimum state is needed to properly enforce this order. And that state basically just protects people's stuff. Rights are less of a matter of freedom to than they are of freedom from. They define what I'm not what I'm allowed to do, but what you're not allowed to do to me. And as a result, anything that does not explicitly harm another individual is fair game. Whether I'm poor or rich, I should be free to use my holdings as I see fit. Right, because the poor have so many holdings to work with. See, this is why I can't stand libertarians. More or less than communists, because you are pretty prickly with Marx too. They're all terrible. Humanity's helpless and our political constructs are trash. Okay, she's definitely getting worse. Well, seeing as Robert has already presented his ideas, perhaps we can engage with them and see for ourselves. Right. Our world starts wholly unowned. Anyone can lay claim to it. What do you mean by this? World start as untamed wilderness, right for the taking. I guess. Do you believe the world started divided into countries, cities, and farms? Humanity had to claim areas, found desirable, build a fence, mix labor with local resources, come to own them. Well, some humans weren't everywhere. Sure, humans weren't everywhere initially, but what about the animals? They have territory they've claimed, right? I dedicated a section of my book to this very topic. Animals are rarely valued by my colleagues. But I believe animals count for something. Higher animals, at least, should be given a weight in deliberations about what to do. I suppose you could view animals as having their own claims and alter the principles of libertarianism accordingly. Where they roam, they own. That's not a position I hold, but it's certainly a matter worth pondering. Individual can claim as much property as they're able to with little limitation. What do you mean by that? It's up to individuals to claim as much of the unclaimed as they can. You also said with little limitation, so is there some limitation? Yes, the little thing I call the Lockean Provicio. Oh no, you named it after him. His ego's big enough already. Well, I did this decades ago, so perhaps I'm partly responsible. Regardless, the Provicio stipulates all claims are acceptable unless they claim actively makes life worth for other individuals. It's a principle that will kick in very rarely. Still seems like an important part of your structure. Can you update your argument to reflect that? Statement updated. No limits on how much property someone can claim, as long as others aren't affected. Statement's functionally same as before. Individuals free to claim as much as they can, as long as it doesn't block others from their needs. Alright, what's the backing? Suppose you could come across the only oasis in the desert and a string hammock between you and two trees. And string a hammock between two trees. Should you therefore come by to own the whole oasis? No? Of course not. If you only claim this limited necessity for yourself, you would condemn all the others who need to cross the desert. Now suppose you develop a novel cure for cancer, claim intellectual property rights to it, and want to charge people exorbitant prices to use it. Should the state grant a patent that allows you to do this? Is this also a no? Gotta be honest, kinda guessing here. I'd say it's a yes. Others could find another cure after all. God. And with a property right to your cure, you should be free to sell the resulting drug for whatever sum you wish. So we're good on cancer profiteering then. Wonderful. That's why I hate libertarians. But once claimed, goods must be able to be freely exchanged without theft, force, or fraud. What do you mean by this? Individuals must be able to seek whatever transactions they desire. To do so, they must also be confident they won't be coerced or misled. Free market is hardly free if decisions are made under the threat of force, after all. While people can lay claim to many things, it's possible for anyone to claim everything. It follows that individuals will both control goods that others need and need goods controlled by others. So once private property has been appropriated, we are morally required to have a free market. That way, no people can request and trade assets they own for assets they want. And what? We're just okay with the results no matter what happens? If somewhere in the chain of transactions theft, coercion, or fraud occurred, we could safely say the property involved is unjustly held. The minarchist state should then intervene. But otherwise, all holdings can be considered just. Minimal state would therefore form to protect against such aggression. Individuals do not have a right to threaten or coerce others, but they do have a right to punish those who do. This value is commonly referred to as the non-aggression principle. But as you discussed with Locke, individual responses are difficult, so we need a minimal state to carry out such punishments. Let's back that up. This follows the model of many of my predecessors, Locke, Hobbes, Rousseau. People see arguments that protect their rights in the free market. Individuals voluntarily contract others who provide protection services. These transactions would form a network of private security, a minimal state created without even trying. As people will opt for the version that best suits them, any violating companies would have their services replaced with another. What if these security agencies attack those who are not under contract? Fair question. I have a few more charts on the subject of interplay between. No more charts. Fine, I'll summarize. All will learn that warfare is not in the interest of the security companies or their clients. Night Watchman. By Night Watchman, I mean the minimal state does not involve itself with the lives of citizens except to protect against the aggressions of others. Bodies that provide such protection are justified, the courts, police, and military. That any more extensive state will violate a person's right not to be forced to participate and is unjustified. Okay. Libertarian nonsense, got it. What can we debate here? I mean, yeah, this would be a good thing for libertarians, but... Let me try the other one. The limited resources. Aha, there we are. Nozick, you were so pleased when I challenged Rawls' ideal of unity with the realities of our non-ideal world. Of course, that veil of ignorance can only exist in the realm of theory. People can't simply discard their self-interest. And you believe your philosophy avoids similar pitfalls. The rights of the individuals are at its core, so individuals will find little to complain about. I'm not so sure. Because instead of worrying about the government, they now have to worry about every other person on the planet. Do explain, Ariadne Jones. In Nozick's case, the core issue is not human nature, but the nature of the world. Because no matter how clever you are, there are only so many goods to claim. Eventually, some will be shut out. But I accounted for that. Right, the Lockean proviso allowing us to block transactions that harm others. You argue this proviso rarely matters, and I guess I could believe that if the world was largely unoccupied. But in a world that's densely populated, where resources are not adequately distributed, in other words, our world, you could easily make the argument that every claim does harm. The first time someone says, I own this, someone down the chain could starve. Ooh, you tell him. Come to think of it, that's the argument Marx made, isn't it? You've opened the door to the very philosophy you despise most. Unkempt. There we go, Nozick. When placed in the real world, the Lockean proviso kicks in far more often than you intended. Your pure protection of property rights is hardly pure at all. Well stated once again, Ariadne Jones. It really was. If only there were a metric more nuanced than the Lockean proviso. I have some thoughts on that very subject. Well, shucks, John. You could have spoken up earlier. He tried, but you nonsensed all over it. I guess that's true. Apologies, John, I got carried away. It's not a big deal. Shall we continue? Please. Well then, only one thing to do. Change places! Jesus! How did they even do that so quickly? Ahem. Luckily, Miss Jones, objection leads nicely to what I wish to say. While the veil of ignorance is a thought experiment, it serves to create an honest assessment of a world as it is. Various constraints and strains on society were very much on my mind. Now, as Miss Jones has said, and Robert has demonstrated, some people will always struggle to see beyond themselves. Nonetheless, I believe the original position can identify an approach that will reach a critical threshold of support. Presentation! When society is assessed from the original position, it becomes clear we must organize society to maximize the well-being of the least favored. This means some things are distributed equally, rights and freedoms. And comfortable standard of living must be guaranteed for all citizens, so even the worst off have incentive to cooperate. But forms of inequality that benefit everyone should be allowed. For example, higher pay for the harder working makes it possible for all to achieve a better life. Structured this way, society is created that all would be willing to participate in. I hope that was clear enough. Now I got it. Through the lens of the original position, we can structure society for the betterment of all. It is, in fact, the only society that can adequately correct for past actions which have disenfranchised so many. So if I'm not wrong, if I'm not reading this incorrectly, it's a basis of equity. There's a base level of equity that everyone has, but what you build upon that equity is completely up to you, but you're not going to be, if you're not, John from down the street is working is a freighter, right? He's making a lot more money than you. Miss Macy, who's a baker, but none of you are going hungry. None of you are at threat of losing your house. You both have that same level of safety net, that equity that you are kept in to make sure that you can live comfortably and continue to contribute to society. Historical injustice. I will admit it seems important to rectify the corrupt transactions of the past, but to do so justly we need to somehow assess every exchange over hundreds of years. Such a task seems incredibly difficult, if not impossible. Well, working from the original position, we can naturally correct for these injustices. Well, Ariadne, looks like we've got our work cut out for us. You mean I've got my work cut out for me? You'll just vaguely gesture at ideas again. Society assessed from the original position. Those in the original position don't know personal B. As a result, they only make sure the world has the worst off. They will only make sure even the worst off has a shot at decent life. Just back that up. It doesn't really. This sort of decision-making, risk management, self-degree and self-interest in the original position. You just don't need to know who the self is. Scariest possibility is that you emerge and find yourself amongst the most destitute. So it makes sense to apply a maximin approach when you maximize your lowest values. You can ensure those at the bottom still have something meaningful to work with, and no matter where you wind up, you will as well. Okay. Equally rights and freedoms. Can I challenge that? I guess clarify this. What do you mean by this? Anything we determine to be right should be allocated to everyone. Okay, but what do you consider a right? As comfort standard of living was guaranteed for all citizens, so even the worst have to send to cooperate. What do you mean by this? It's an inhumane choose structure where some can barely live. It's always true, but it becomes more clear when we picture ourselves among the dispossessed. I guess let's back that up. This is an intuitive guarantee under the maximum approach. The poorest are destitute, lacking even food and shelter. All their efforts go towards basic survival. It's impossible to pull yourself up by your bootstraps if you have no boots to pull on. It's impossible to do even with boots, and the impossibility was the original intent of the phrase, but I digress. By setting aside an adequate amount for everyone, we ensure everyone has an opportunity to pursue a better life, or just lays around. And what's wrong with that? That does become a possibility, but having a few beneficiaries who don't give back is a small price to pay for the good of all. And besides, my next statement will show why people still be incentivized to aim higher. Now, I'm going to say something. People like working. People want to work. There's a lot of people who have enjoyment in work. Just because one guy wants to lay on his couch and play Fortnite all day doesn't mean there isn't a guy who wants to be an engineer just as badly. Like, the idea that, oh, what about all the lazy people who are freeloading? Who cares? For every freeloader, there'll be like 2 guys who want to fucking, rebuild the future. Come on now. But forms of inequality that benefit everyone should be allowed. For example, higher pay for the harder worker makes it possible to achieve a better life. What do you mean by this? Not all inequality is detrimental to society. Certain permissions can result in a world that is better off for all. Backing. Those in the original position may not know where they'll wind up, but they know where they'll want an opportunity to grow. It is better for the betterment of society that those who are exceptionally skilled are rewarded for applying those skills. This prevents the ambitious from becoming resentful. They get a favored position in a stable system with lots of cooperation and few discontents. I see, so you believe society should have some economic engine at its core, just a carefully controlled one. That's called socialism, this is clearly socialism. That word is not deserving of the negative associations it has, but it does have those associations, so I prefer to avoid it. True. Should have just owned it, John. Join the great revolutionaries. Okay, let's walk this back a bit. I don't want to argue this guy. This guy's right. I don't know what to tell you. Structured this way, well, obviously he's not right in terms of the name of the game, but these ideas are Not bad. Structure all to participate. Egalitarian society is a society that's hard to object to. Any rational analysis, after all, reveals that it provides opportunity at all. It's starting to feel familiar. Okay, can we challenge something here? Self-interest. Kind of covers the self-interest bit. I'm not going to use covert fascist. Nope. I figured that one didn't have much water. I guess what's the backing? It's always fairly common philosophical idea at this point, the one Robert I share. Because it's a fantastic idea! Yep, Locke's still hanging around. It's true, though it's also plain that we disagree as the exact nature of the extent of these rights. Regardless, every citizen must be guaranteed an adequate scheme of basic liberties compatible with other people also having those rights. The opportunity to run for office, to speak freely, to defend themselves against accusations. Man, I'm having a rough time trying to challenge this. Let's read our ideas. I feel like self-interest. I feel like I've used it a couple times here. Structured this way, society's created all. Okay, what about? Nope. Ugh, getting minced. Oh man. Forms of inequality or benefit everyone should be allowed. Higher pay for hard work. Society we would build provides external motivations for participation. Still, economic mobility with the egalitarian society doesn't demand we all stay at the same level. It's counter to, of sorts, to Robert's fear of constant interference. Cultural standard guarantees against this worst offices. Alright. Establish how we improve lives for the more corporations. Cultural standard of living. Dives a bit deeper in some ways we want to protect. Man, I'm having okay. Let's consult here. Well, got any tips for me, Nozick? Got nothing new for you. This feels the same as before. You already heard my response to this sort of philosophy, and while I can appreciate what he's going for, it still doesn't work for me. You're gonna have to trust yourself in this one. Wait, so I don't even get a vague gestures this time? Society success from the original. Man, it's hard to beat this guy. Self-interest again. Rawls, but what if people use the safety net as an excuse to do nothing? Did Nozick plant this idea in your head? He brings it up far too often. Because it's a real issue? No, it isn't. To be honest, the notion that a majority of people would choose to settle for a mere baseline life seems preposterous. I mean, that's just true, right? Individuals are far more self-motivated than we give them credit for. My next statement establishes external incentives as well. Even if a few do settle, society is structured to those reward those who put in effort. There would be very little to complain about. Is the idea that someone might be able to scrape by without work truly that abhorrent? Abhorrent enough that you deny safety net to others who desperately need it? Any reasonable person would see a stable baseline for society's overall benefit. There's that reasonable person, the qualifier again. Oh, man. Historical injustice. Rawls, but if any equality is allowed, won't that just perpetuate historical injustices? After all, many people only reach their superior positions because society's biases. That is indeed true, however, the original position is the best place to dismantle such unjust systems. Knowing you could wind up in that disadvantaged group, you would not wish to allow that sort of inequality to persist. Work twice as hard for half the recognition is clearly a just status quo. It would have to go even if it required a large upfront adjustment. Then, with the playing field leveled, we could all be rewarded equally for our efforts. Oh man. But forcing quite. Oh man. Oh man, oh man, oh man. Organized society maximizes the well-being of the least favored. Today's test of ideas meant to help decide what principles are best. Covered fat. I'm not saying that. Been shown monetarily, miss other benefits like sunsets apparently. I feel like limited resources maybe, but okay, getting minced here. Okay, I guess limited resources. Guaranteeing a basic standard of living for everyone seems like a nice plan, but what if there are not enough essentials to go around? You yourself brought up the constant constraint of limited resources. I believe Kropotkin establishes why this is not the case. In general, we are capable of building enough necessities for all. Resources are mainly limited in the face of Nozoki and hoarding. And even though some equality would be allowed, an equality great enough to make a livable baseline is impossible would not. While Kropotkin's anarcho-communist society was not organized enough to manage that allocation, one managed from the original position would be. The couple stand. God, I'm still not done arguing with this guy? Oh, man. Oh, golly, OG. Resources mainly limited in the face of Nozeki and hoarding. Oh, there's gotta be something I can eat alive here. Ah, f me. Aye. Ah, f me. Okay, hold on. Any rational person can look at the source side and see opportunities at all. Achieve it would be everyone's best interest to maintain it. Yes, this is the conclusion. Society is no interest. Not me, man. Oh man. Oh boy, what do I do here? Oh, my brain. Okay, what about self-interest, I guess? Ah, f me.
Nonsense.
That's the weakest nonsense I've ever heard. Have to agree, Miss Jones' throat, okay? If you'd like to try again, Arena, I could fetch you an idea of water. Won't help, it's just my objection isn't really satisfying. It's just kind of depressing, and it definitely won't help shake Mom from her stupor. Is this a guaranteed fail here? Rawls, I guess it is a guaranteed fail. Rawls, you've done a good job shoring up your system, explaining how you believe any reasonable person can support it. But when we went through the gauntlet of self-interest, I'm still not sure people would rally behind it. Your problem is the same as before. Some will feel this approach holds them back. They'll do whatever they can to break those constraints and further their own goals. And who knows, they might just succeed. So that's it, huh? The ultimate critique I cannot escape is that I expect too much from humanity. Your whole reason for pursuing this philosophy was to counter such self-interest. If everyone went behind the veil once in a while, the world might be a better place. But we don't live lives entirely separate from ourselves. We can only imagine such lives, and although you make a strong case for that being a good thing to do, some won't succeed and others won't even want to try. You've given me much to think about, Miss Jones. It's like everyone else we've met, much to think about, but nothing that actually works. Well, if that's the best critique she's got, I must be exceeding expectations. And I have infinite time to think of a way to get everyone on board, don't I? I mean, best of luck, John. But have you considered, perhaps, that uniting everyone behind one system is a fool's errand? You can't satisfy everybody, especially when there are some who will be dissatisfied as long as others are satisfied. And what would you have us do instead? Acknowledge that people are different. The best of all possible worlds for me will not be that for you. And that much is obvious. But you know what? Accepting this fact is the key that unlocks success. Upon the foundation of libertarianism, we'll build a framework that does work for everyone. Really? How'll you pull that off? What do you say, John? One last round? God, no! No, I don't have the credibility for this! Change places! No, I'm a fraud! I'm a fraud! Alright, please be short. I don't have the credibility. I'm so low on HP. If you truly believe in the rights of the individuals, you must accept that different individuals prefer different societies. The ideal utopia would thus consist of many smaller utopias, divergent communities in which people live different lives. Society would constantly create new communities. Everyone would be free to move between them and seeking the society they desire most. The overarching government is still minarchist, only existing to enforce those freedoms and stop those who would interfere. There we go, pinnacle of my philosophy. Since any form of a community may be established within the framework, it is compatible with all utopian visions while guaranteeing none. I dare say I've accomplished the Rawlsian goal better than Rawls, creating a system that no one can object to. Really, no one at all. Well, almost no one. Imperialist utopians might run into issues, but other utopians will realize their ambitions within the framework. Imperialist utopians? What's that mean? I'm glad we are covering this. Nozick's categorizations of utopians is quite a useful concept. Thank you, Arbiter. You see, there are three types of utopians. Existential utopians, who have a world they desire in mind, but have no problem with others wanting something different. Missionary utopians, like my friend John here, want to persuade everyone to join, but they won't go as far to force them. And then there are imperialist utopians who wish to forcibly indoctrinate all into their ideal pattern of the community. Imperialist utopians are the only ones the framework would oppose, actively countering their efforts with the society-wide security. Right, okay, I think I get it now. I'm ready to ask my questions. Ready to back me up, Rawls? Always. Then let's pin down his pinnacle. Okay. Truly believe in the rights of individuals, you must accept that different individuals prefer different societies. You mean by this? Different people have different values. From this we can conclude they'll have different ideal societies. Alright, what's the backing? Throughout your visits here, you surely among the living, you've encountered individuals with very different dreams. What Marx wants is not what Locke wants, what Confucius wants is not what Machiavelli wants. Machiavelli doesn't seem to know what he wants. Yes, well, anyone with such terrible ideas was bound to question them eventually. The point is this: with such disparate desires, the idea that single society could work for everyone is incredible. Not incredible as in remarkable, incredible as in unbelievable. The ideal utopia would thus consist of many smaller utopias. Clarify. Through the framework that is libertarian and laissez-faire, the communities within need not be. Whether a capitalist state or a religious commune, the framework allows for all sorts of sub-societies. Even like really discriminatory societies. If all the racial supremacists want to carve out their own tiny pockets of the world, then yes, the framework would allow that. But it's important to note they would not be allowed to impose on others. No colonial behavior allowed. And anyone who grew sick of such an ideology would have countless viable alternatives. Anyway, this could serve to quarantine them from the rest of us. Fair enough. Hateful societies. I guess back that up for me. Accepting everyone for their own preferences forces us to confront what kind of utopian they were. Or we are. It's most consistent with libertarianism to adopt existential utopian approach to live and let live. If you wish to consent to join a Rawlsian society, that's fine for you, but I don't have to. The framework allows all of our ideals to exist side by side. Society would constantly create new communities. Everyone would be free to move between them, seeking the society they desire most. What do you mean by this? Individuals must not be trapped in the society they're born into. People must be able to discover other communities, found new communities, and leave and join societies as they please. Almost sounds like you're advocating for open borders. But no right-wing politician I've met would ever. Careful, the world is not cleanly split into right and left. If we truly believe in individualism and personal freedom, ease of travel is essential. If we are not free to seek opportunity, we're hardly free. How does that work? Let's say you've visited several communities and determined none are for you. Some are close, but none are fully aligned. Maybe you've met a few others along the way who share your feelings. The framework makes it easy for you to branch out and claim a new space for your ideals. The process, and the fact that no one is allowed to impede it, will result in an ever-shifting landscape. Some communities will be abandoned, some will struggle or split, others will flourish, gain members, and be duplicated elsewhere. Not to constantly repeat my arguments, but doesn't founding communities have the same limited resource problem as before? Well, no, not to the same extent, because you won't be starting from scratch. Community forming encourages sharing resources more effectively than a purely individualized approach. You and your ideological allies all want your new community to succeed, after all. Backing statement added. Some communities naturally process forming communities, individuals pool resource. I feel like, once again, self-interest. Those collective ambitions are still consistent with libertarianism? Of course, the entire effort is created from voluntary transactions. Anyone who does not agree with the ideology would not have to participate. Just back that up, I guess, for me. Choice from communities, discovery procedure, people review their options and will want to group with others who agree. But on the other hand, people will pass up communities that are unfriendly or simply too different. This deals with your original limitation objection. The ability to freely join communities means you can gain access to communities' resources, if they want to share them. Well, yes, but each community must win and hold the voluntary adherence of its members. This leaves certain groups at disadvantage. Socialists are always tempted to be imperialists because they know they would be few volunteers. That's an extremely debatable, dubious statement. Well, the framework would give us the scaffolding to find out. It would allow us for many variants of socialism as you'd like, provided you can get any support. Overarching government is still minarchist. Kind of feels like a version of federal government and state structure. If federal government is extremely limited, then yes, there are parallels, but the important part is that it's extremely limited. Government will leave sub-communities alone unless they try to exploit or defraud others. Nothing I've described here deviates dramatically from the ideals of libertarianism. While pocket communities can be diverse, our overall structure is still nothing more than what's needed to protect our liberties. Minimal state is supported with a standing army, police force, and courts, but that's all that would be required. Okay. Yeah. I want to review some of your statements. Nosy, correct me if I get anything wrong. You believe that you get around the limited resource problem by allowing people to form communities. Those who don't have enough on their own will join with kindred spirits to bolster their cause, like founding a company, I guess. This all seems correct. And communities can become desirable not just because they're ideals, but because of the prosperity of their members. Of course, wealth is one of the many ways a community can strengthen itself. I have to say, this is an interesting model. To get around disagreements by building your utopia to support such disagreements, it's rather clever. Thank you, Ariane. So what sort of sub-society will you form? Took him a second. You're not actually agreeing with my model, are you? Tell me, Nozick, what happens if the resources are all in the hands of those who disagree with you? Or even worse, those who hate you? What do you... The core of this philosophy is that it allows for all sorts of communities. It follows that some will be based on identity, favoring racial, sexual, or cultural purity. To put it less delicately, communities of bigots. Yes, those will exist, but they'll be weak and essentially self-quarantined. The framework won't allow them to impose on others. A nice thought, let's put it to the test. Is the way wealth distributed currently the result of just transactions? Of course not. History is stained with unfair trade practices by any libertarian standard. We undo those we can, properly sort, and minarchist state would stop them going forward. Properly sort, a tough job for any government, let alone one that prides itself on minimal interference. We say two wrongs don't make a right, but if we can't correct the first wrong, where does that leave us? Those so-called weak groups will start with all the advantages of history. They can use their ill-gotten gains to throw elaborate hater parties and drink all the most expensive haterade. Such societies feel less like a quarantine and more like a gated community. I don't believe it. Everyone should be. This is why libertarians suck. Personal liberty is important to you. Hell, it's important to me. But personal liberty works so much better when not bound by the chains of history. When built on society that's already stratified, your libertarian utopia only reinforces existing issues. In short, your philosophy works best when built upon a fair foundation. Foundation it will struggle to create. Ooh, tell him. Am I about to get nonsensed? This is a salient point. I confess I came to question this same issue myself later in life. Seems I must again admit the aspects of my philosophy are woefully, so this is it. Nozick's philosophy is crumbling, just like all the rest. All that's left is for Rawls to tear him down and prove once again that none of us have any idea what we're doing. Now hold on, the core of my philosophy is still, come on Rawls, get it over with. Well, I mean, it's just, finish him! Mom, stop, you've made your point. This is just another example of how messed up everything.
Nonsense!
So I will not finish anyone. Duh! Robert has admitted a key fault in his philosophy, and I'm glad he's able to do so. I naturally think there are many, many more than the one he admitted, but those are discussions for another day. Similarly, even though John's conclusions are misguided, he's an excellent check on my impulses. Only the refusal to listen guarantees one against being ensnared by the truth. It's true my ideals work best in a society that is already just and do little to create a just starting point. I did not fully knit the human considerations and joint cooperative activities my philosophy allows into its fabric. I don't believe it. Neither do I. Robert, if you're willing to admit that much, how can you still stand by the core of libertarianism? Well, constant regulation is still an unjustifiable intrusion. But perhaps its victims of the most serious injustices were owed compensation by those who benefit from that form of injustice as sort of a one-time package. Interesting to see you of all people invent reparations. How do you resolve that with your early ideal of a minimal state? After all, different individuals will claim different injustices unless the situation is assessed from the original position. Again with the original position, John, I swear! Is that it? Indeed. That is indeed it. Wow, okay. That was actually kind of amazing. Oh, both seemed genuinely motivated to build a better world, even if they didn't agree on what the world was. And when Nozick realized his philosophy had some rough implications, he actually reconsidered those aspects. I get more ideas of possible futures of them together than I would have just one. Well then, Ariadne Jones, has their debate shifted your view? Is there hope for society after all? I mean, maybe. I don't know. You presented me with the ideal, but will people in the real world reflect and grow like Rawls and Nozick did? Just look at Mom. It took history's greatest thinkers to get her to admit she might be wrong, and the process broke her. I'm not broken. What? I'm not broken, Adney. Or at least I'm putting the pieces back together. And it wasn't the dead philosophers who wore me down. It was you. Me. Seeing myself and our whole system through your eyes. I thought you avoided politics because of how much of me it took from you. I see now it's about what it took from me. And yes, there's been good in my work. I promoted education, founded Capra. I've even had a few moments like Rawls and Nozick where after vigorous discussion an opponent admits I made them reconsider. Only in the face of our political pressure does it not all fizzle out. If we could change that, how? I don't know, Pumpkin. It's hard to be a philosopher and a politician. They require two fundamentally different instincts. Still need to be popular to win, and that need can be corrosive. But that doesn't have to mean it's hopeless. It just means we have to be vigilant because nothing can succeed if we stop ourselves from growing. Okay, now I think there's some hope for society. Ah, wait, was that the gate? We did it! We won? Gate's finally open. Excellent work, both of you. Both of us. You both acknowledge there's room to grow, and for the living, that's enough. I could say something poetic about how if you're not actively growing, you are not truly living, and thus belong among the dead, but to be honest, I just thought of that now. Either way, the gate opens to you once more. Your life can carry on as it should. So bizarre. I've gotten what I wanted, but I'm still filled with doubt. Is that what I wanted actually good? Winning the election or bringing philosophy to all? Marcus and Jen will believe in your dream, so does Dad, and so do I. Let me tell you, I'm far more likely to vote for you now than when this all started. You wouldn't have voted for... I'm kidding, Mom. Mostly. Arbiter, once I get through that gate, the bridge between worlds will be stabilized and you will be able to travel freely. Would you like to come with me? Be the first ambassador to my unideal world? After all you've gone through to make this happen, Pithy Smith, how could I not? See you both on the other side. See you soon, Pumpkin. Are you ready, Pythia Smith? Not even remotely. On the count of 3, whatever you need. No point stalling further, I guess. 1, 2... 3. Now I worry that this next chapter is just going to be an epilogue and won't take too long. But if it is, I'll just slap it at the end of this video. And I'll stop recording anyway and restart for a new video. Just in case it is that long. But we shall see. That was a bit of a doozy. Nozick and Rawls, eh? Libertarianism versus socialism. That was a good one. That was long. That was hard. That was stressing for a moment there. But if you made this far in the video, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe or don't. I'm not your mother, but you better brush your teeth. Have a good one. Bye-bye.